Hey family, it's me, Queenie Brown, author, speaker, and founder of the Self-Love Movement. And today I want to share a little something that's more intimate. I want to go into a little detail about the pain that I endured on my journey towards learning to love me better. It started out when I'd say I was about 24 or 25 years old, and I started to notice that my memory was slipping. I didn't fully understand what was going on, but I started to have an inability to focus, and when I was trying to concentrate on something, I would be distracted very easily, and that wasn't consistent with my past, so I didn't really understand what was changing in me. Of course, when I talked to people in my world, they kept saying, girl, that's just stress. Usually when you're under stress, it causes you to have issues with focusing, so whatever, I dismissed that. Then I started to have insomnia, and then headaches started to come on, and I didn't know what was going on, of course, and I just kind of pushed through it. Well, years passed, and I would have bouts of those here and there, but it wasn't consistent. So I got to where I was about 28 years old, and then the symptoms started to come on really, really strong. I started to have muscle spasms really bad, and I didn't understand what was going on, and every time I would go to the doctor, they would say, well, you know, Miss Brown, you're probably under a little stress. Well, you know, Miss Brown, you're just under a little stress, and if you deal with the stress in your life, then you'll be able to overcome these muscle spasms. And I'm thinking, what the heck am I stressed about? I'm happy, I'm in a relationship, we're doing well, financially we're doing well, I don't have any real bills, I'm not stressed. So it didn't make sense. I couldn't reconcile what they were saying with my life and equate that to stress. And so it started to get worse. The muscles started to tighten up, and I started to have shooting pains in those muscles. And then I would go to the emergency room. I think at one point I was going to the emergency room at least twice a month, sometimes more. And the doctors would give me a shot of Demerol or a shot of muscle relaxer or something to try to help me to calm my nerves or whatever it was, and to help me relax. And they kept telling me, you know, it's stress. You need to go ahead and deal with whatever stress is in your life. And I continued to dismiss it. Well, then the panic attack started. I had never experienced terror like I did when I had my first panic attack. And all I can remember is just panting and wheezing and not being able to get enough air, and I just felt like I wanted to run. I just wanted to take off my clothes and just take off running, and nobody could stop me at that point. I didn't understand why I wanted to do this. I didn't understand what I was trying to get away from. I didn't even know what was a panic attack. All I knew was that I needed to run. And if any of you have ever had a panic attack, you know the terror that you feel, and it's oftentimes there's nothing triggering it. It just automatically comes on, and you're just in terror. And that's how I started to feel every now and then. And I can even remember having panic attacks in my sleep. And there's nothing more terrifying than waking up and in a pool of sweat and just wanting to run and not even having a reason for it. It's really unsettling. So, of course, I spoke to the doctors about the panic attacks. They told me it was stress, and I dismissed it. So, after that, I started to notice that my lips started to itch, and this is really strange, but my lips would itch, and so I would scratch them and everything, and then eventually they would blister, and then they would crack, and you can imagine how unsexy that had to be. But they would crack, and then they would scab, and after they would scab, if I would smile or anything, it would cause them to crack, and then they would ooze, and it was just disgusting. And of course, there's nothing sexy about a cracking and oozing lip on a woman. It was just horrible. After that, they would burn, and I didn't know what to do. Of course, the doctors kept saying stress is stress is stress, and you know, whatever. Well, eventually I was diagnosed with TMJ, and that's when you clench your jaws really tight at night. Sometimes you even chomp on your teeth at night, and it's a stress reaction. And so what had happened was I was clenching my jaws so tightly that they literally locked up on me, and I couldn't open my mouth wide enough to even bite a burger. I think my mouth would only open like about less than an inch wide, and that was it. When I went to the doctor that time, I went to the dentist, and he was showing me some exercises that I could do to help strengthen or release my muscles in my jaws. And he talked to me, and he was saying, you know, Miss Brown, I understand that you have talked to doctors and you've had all these symptoms, and they all come to the same conclusion that stress is your issue. Well, until you do something about it, this is only going to get worse. You're going to continue to see different types of symptoms manifest because you're not dealing with the problem. And it wasn't until he said that I said, okay, fine, what do I need to do? And so he said I needed to talk to somebody. I just needed to make an appointment with a therapist and just start talking and sharing my story. And in doing that, it'll help to release whatever it was that was inside of me. So I surrendered at that point. I mean, if I can't buy the burger, we got a problem. So I started seeing a therapist. And it wasn't until I was able to hear myself tell my story that I realized that, wow, you know, maybe there is a lot of stress in my life, and maybe I have been holding on to a lot, and maybe I've been stuffing my emotions, and maybe I've not really been as attentive as I needed to be to my own emotional well-being. And as long as I continued to ignore it, then my body was just going to continue to try to tell me over and over and over again. So I realized that there were a lot of things that I had repressed in my life. There was a lot of abuse that I had endured. There were a lot of painful situations that I was involved in. And one in particular, I had not verbalized to anyone in my life, and here I was almost 30 years old. I had never acknowledged or verbalized the fact that I was molested at 9 years old. And I'd always remembered it, but I had never had it. I can't really explain how that, I've never acknowledged it or verbalized it or told anyone. And so it was almost as though it didn't exist. And when I was in therapy, I got the courage to tell my therapist about it. And that was the first time that I had acknowledged. I hadn't even told my husband. So during that time, it really helped me to reconcile the pain that I had lived through growing up and the pain that I had caused on my own as an adult. Different choices that I made that were both painful to myself and to others. I was still a lot of unforgiveness that I was dealing with. I hadn't forgiven others, and I also hadn't forgiven myself. It was just a lot of stuff that I didn't realize that was just a part of me, a part of my baggage that I was carrying around every day. And so I stayed with my therapist for 2 years. And honestly, that was the best decision I could have ever made because it forced me to see me differently. It allowed me to get the courage to look at myself in the mirror and like me, because I didn't even realize at the time that I didn't like me. So the interesting thing, though, is it wasn't until I left the therapist that my symptoms got worse. And so I was, After I left therapy, I remember, and the reason I left therapy was because I switched jobs, and she was no longer covered under that medical program, and so of course I didn't want to start over with someone else, so I just said, I think I'm good. You know, I've been through this for 2 years. I've dealt with the issues. I'm good. And that was not the case. So it wasn't very, very long after that the muscle spasms got so much worse. They got to be so much worse. And they literally started to get so tight that my neck and shoulders got so tight that it literally, this is how I walked around every day, because these muscles in here had gotten so very tight. It was like I was a bodybuilder, and I couldn't turn to the left or to the right to even drive my car. So now my doctor, he put me on disability, and he said that I needed to get my body back on track because it was really going into some major spasms at the time. So at this point, I had constant pain in my neck, constant pain in my back, and the tighter my neck got, the more the nerves that were flowing through those muscles would be pinched. And if you've ever had a pinched nerve, you know that it's like a shooting pain that goes straight through your body, and it's startling, and it's excruciatingly painful, and it's something that you immediately want to do whatever you can to stop the pain. Well, imagine both of these muscles in my neck and my shoulders were so tight that any nerves that were flowing through them were being squeezed constantly. And so they would squeeze, and then the nerve would fire, and the muscle would squeeze, and the nerve would fire. And it was like a constant, perpetual cycle of pain. And the only thing the doctors could do was inject me with muscle relaxer, pain medication, and anti-inflammatory. So now I'm getting injections in the muscles in my neck and in my shoulders and in my back. And when they would do it, they would literally put the needle in at least a ½ inch into the muscle to inject the medication. Oh, it was painful. It was so painful. I remember my feet burning. This is so strange, but my feet would burn constantly. It was as though someone was taking a flame and just running it underneath my feet all the time, and I could never get relief from it. And I remember sitting in the bathtub and getting towels really cold with cold water and wrapping them around my feet to try to get my feet to cool off. And I remember not being able to have my feet touch the sheets at night. I'd have to lay my feet off of the bed so that they wouldn't be touching anything, because whenever they would touch a sheet, it would just hurt even more. My skin began to hurt. Anytime someone would touch me, just a touch that gently was excruciatingly painful. Hugs, I didn't even want to be hugged. Don't even touch me because it hurt. Now, just thinking about it, I could cry because I remember the pain. I remember feeling so alone and not really having anyone to even be able to have compassion for me, because nobody could even understand how much pain I was living with. What else? I couldn't wear heels anymore. I had to walk on flat shoes. I had been wearing heels since I was 11 years old. I used to be a model back home in LA, and all I wore were heels. And at that point, I couldn't even wear high heels anymore. I wore these hospital shoes. And so my muscles in my neck and shoulders got so tight that it pulled my spine out of alignment, and it caused 2 discs to rupture in my low back and 3 discs to rupture in my neck. And so at that point, I had shooting pains, shooting down my arms, shooting into my brain, and then shooting down the fronts and the sides of my legs. And the pain was just unbelievable. And what's really strange about all of this is I was 30 years old. This started when I was about 28, and it progressed. But what woman at this age is dealing with this kind of pain? The doctors didn't know what was going on. They had no idea where these symptoms were coming from. They couldn't explain it to me. The only thing they knew to do was give me muscle relaxers, give me pain pills, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. And then, of course, if you don't know this already, when you're in constant pain, your blood pressure increases. So now I had to take blood pressure medication on top of all of that. So it just got to be unbearable. Well, at one point, I went to a doctor, and he told me that the way to help the herniated discs in my back was to start this spinal decompression therapy, where they would tie the top of my shoulders and my top part of my body to the top of the table, and my waist and the bottom of my body to the bottom of the table, and then I would lay on the table, and then they would stretch the table, open it up and close it, and open it up and close it. And the whole idea was to stretch my spine to give the discs an opportunity to get oxygen and whatever else they needed to heal themselves. But I gotta tell you, when I started that program, they told me, Ms. Brown, we're not going to recommend that you go through your purse and you pull out anything that's not vital, and do not lift anything heavier than 5 pounds. Don't try to go up and down flights of stairs every day. They gave me this long list of all this stuff that they were recommending that I not do. But I didn't have any idea that what that list meant was not these are the things we recommend you don't do. It was these are the things that you won't be able to do. Don't even think about it. And when I started the program, I had just started a new job. I had been on disability for a while, and I had been out of work for over a year. And I started a new job, and then all of a sudden, the treatment came available. And so now I'm on this new job, and I have on these hospital shoes, and I'm walking around the new job like this because I can barely move because of the pain. I'm medicated. It was horrible. The shoes used to squeak. I remember my colleagues at my new job started calling me Squeaky. Can you imagine? Anyway, so it was really, 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 really horrible. So the doctors, again, had no idea what was going on, and then eventually they figured it out. They said that all these symptoms were consistent with fibromyalgia, and that I needed to go to a rheumatologist and have this test. And the tests. How many tests I took. I remember one test, they wanted to test to see how much nerve damage I had endured. And the way that they did this test is they take needles and they push the needles into different parts of your body, and then they shoot a charge into that area to see how fast your muscle reacts, to see how much your nerves have been impacted. Oh, that test was excruciating, and I had to have it done twice. So anyway, they realized that it was fibromyalgia, that any kind of stress that you endure causes a flare-up. And a flare-up is, let's say I get into a heated discussion with someone, and if I'm under any stress at all, I literally can feel my muscles start to tighten up right in my low back, and it rises all the way up, and it rises all the way up, and it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter up my back all the way up to my neck, until my neck and my back and my shoulders are literally locked. And the only thing that I can do at that point is lay down, because the pain is excruciating. And when I say lay down, I mean for at least a week, maybe sometimes even 2, because you have to give your body a chance to come out of that. And it's a lot. So I'm sharing the details of this with you because I'm so very grateful that I was called to this assignment. But when God told me that this is where I was headed, I was in the midst of that. I was in the throes of all of that pain and the insomnia and the depression. Oh, the depression. Imagine being in that kind of pain and not having anyone that can really relate to the pain. And so you're often ridiculed, like, oh, you're just making this up, or people don't even get it. I even had a boss tell me, well, isn't that all in your head? And I wanted to punch him because you have no idea what you're saying to me. You're ridiculing the fact that I'm in this kind of pain and I can't do anything about it but take pills. In my mind, that's what I thought. Anyway, so the depression, I remember days and days on end of just wanting to be in a room, in a dark room, and just sleep. I didn't want to be spoken to. Don't ask me for anything. Just leave me alone and let me wallow in this misery by myself. That's how I felt. And, there's no words to really describe depression. It's just darkness. That's just the bottom line, darkness. And I was in that place for a long time. At one point, the doctors were prescribing 120 pain pills a month to me. And I couldn't even keep up with the prescription. They wanted me to take 4 pain pills a day for 30 days. And I couldn't even do that. I would be comatose. I'd be slobbing all over the place and, just totally high all the time. And while there were some times when I was in the midst of a flare-up where I had to take a lot of those pills, I'm grateful that I'm standing here today honestly sharing that I never ever developed any kind of addiction to them. And when I got to a point where I realized that I can't live in this darkness, I just stopped taking them. And I never have had any kind of issues with going back to them. If I have a flare-up, I still have pills I can take. I'll take them for the flare-up, but then I'm done with them. I don't have to have them. And I'm just grateful because that's only by the grace of God that I did not get completely and totally addicted to those pills, because they're highly addictive. They're narcotics. So the common denominator in all this, all the symptoms, all the pain, all the stress, all the frustration, everything that I endured all those years was all a result of me not knowing how to love me. It was all a result of me not knowing how to have balance in my life, not knowing how to process my emotions, not taking control of my thoughts, not managing my body, not dealing with and processing things the way that they came to me. There's just so much about the way that we live our lives that if we do it in balance and in harmony, we can manage all these emotions and go to the next level. But without that balance, without filling up, without knowing how to love yourself, that balance is not possible. And so we've got to learn how to live in that balance, live in that place of wholeness so that we can step boldly into the call of our life. In the midst of all of that, something amazing happened. God told me that I would be standing right here sharing this story with you. And that throughout all the pain that I had to endure, that it was going to be a testimony and a lesson for you so that you would know that if He can bring me through all of that, He can bring you through whatever it is that you're growing through. And I'm not diminishing or, everybody, as far as I'm concerned, pain is pain. My pain might feel like it's greater pain because it's my pain, but it's no different than your pain. Your pain may not look like my pain, but it's still pain. And so I don't want to take anything away from where you are. But the point is that if he can deliver me from the midst of all of that drama, anything can be done. So I'm going to share more about what happened to me on that fateful silent weekend, and while I was in the midst of all of this, that he revealed this assignment to me in the next video. In any case, thank you for hanging in there with me to hear all the drama about the pain that I've endured, and I'm grateful again that I have been called to share this message with you. And I look forward to teaching you a little bit more about what I've learned on my journey towards loving me. So I'm Queenie Brown. Thank you again for joining me today. I look forward to sharing more about my testimony with you. But in the meantime, you can read more about it in my new book, The Self-Love Lessons, 7 Lessons Every Woman Must Learn About Herself and the Power of Womanhood. And in it, I teach you all about how I grew through all of the symptoms that I explained to you today. So grab your book, go to the website, theselflovelessons.com, grab your book and get connected. We have an exclusive book club that's designed specifically for the readers of this book, and it's called the Wisdom Sister Circles. So make sure you get connected to the Wisdom Sister Circles, and also to our private online community where it's our little playground. We can talk about some of the lessons that we've learned, share our testimony. So it's all private, it's not connected to Facebook, so no one has to feel violated by anyone sharing their posts. Thank you so much for joining me today. May God bless you. And until we meet again, I'll be loving me, and I pray that you'll be loving you.